Thanks for joining us. On today's show, we're going to be talking about how grandparents know best. And Matt, in your book on retirement planning, you talk about grandparents, how they knew best. How is that?
Well, Melissa, it's really, I think if you look at previous generations, they really knew best, meaning that they didn't live beyond their means. You know, they tried to keep things simple. They set a little bit of money aside for the future, gave money to the church or charity or something of that nature, and just really tried to live right. And so, they did some sacrificing for today so that the family and themselves could have a brighter future.
Right. And so that's the secret, huh?
It's kind of one of the secrets, one of the secrets. I think that, especially when you look at retirement planning, things have gotten too complex, and especially if you talk to anybody in our industry, they start throwing technical terms and jargon
Betas
out there.
and alphas and
Simulations and things like that. And it really doesn't need to be that difficult. I mean, really, if you just live within your means, set money aside, you want to have a truly diversified portfolio. I know we talk about what that means some here on the show, but have a truly diversified portfolio and plan properly for the future, then you should be able to have a secure, successful retirement.
And from what I'm hearing, that doesn't mean severe sacrifice.
No, it doesn't have to be. I mean, in some cases, like Matt was saying, some people, they're very conservative. They don't need as much money. But others, if they want to have a lavish retirement, they may need to save a little more. But everybody's going to be a little bit different. But it does not have to be complex or complicated on either side of that coin. So, I mean, you need to be working with someone that understands these types of things and really has your goals in mind when designing the plan.
It's kind of, Melissa, it's a matter of pay yourself first, and then you'll get everything else that you want later in life. And I think in the book we discuss, it really comes down to 3 key principles when it comes to retirement. And this again goes back to keeping it simple, and that is just, keep your money in a safer position. As you get closer and into retirement, you just don't have the luxury of going through large market volatility or shifts and changes like we've seen in the past. So as you start to get closer into retirement, we define that to mean within 10 years of retirement, you really need to start trying to have your retirement nest egg growing or in places that will be a little more safe, or at least have some safety nets underneath. And then while it is in a safer position than when you were working, you also need to make sure that money grows at a reasonable return. And we usually recommend that you need a return that will allow you to take some money out of the account, but you're not withdrawing all of the growth, because you want to leave some money in the account to keep up with and outpace inflation. And then obviously, like we've already discussed, the third item is you just want to keep things as simple as you possibly can. I think the more easy it is to understand your investment plan or your investment account, the easier it is to understand it, usually the better it is for you. And I think the more confusing and complex your plan is, or your investment, whatever it may be, I think if it's too confusing, you don't really understand it, usually those types of accounts are better maybe for the people or the places that recommended it. That's just kind of what we've seen over the years.
On that note, when we talk about clients' plans prior to working with us, we'll ask, well, what are your fees? And the client, they'll answer it reluctantly, and they'll say 1 or 1.5%, and I'll kind of dig a little deeper, because I'll say, you seemed a little confused when I asked that. And they said, well, every time we ask what our fees are, we feel like we're more confused by the end of the meeting than we were when we walked in.
Right?
Yeah.
They use all kinds of fancy terms, but I don't know what any of them
I think I'm paying 1%, but we always recommend that you go out and get a second opinion and make sure that what you think is going on really is.
Well, and Melissa, it's one of the things I talk about in the book. Individuals really need to know what their fees are, because that's common. Individuals think they're paying 1.5% or something like that. It's not unusual for us to meet with individuals, and when we gather the info and do the research, that we'll sometimes find that they're paying maybe 2% or 3%, some cases 4% or more in fees. And to put that into perspective, those are annual fee structures. So if somebody has $1 million and they're paying 3% in fees, that's $30,000 a year they're losing in fees. So over a 10-year time period, that's $300,000.
It's a vacation home.
It's a lot of money. What should the fees be?
Well, if you can avoid them completely, that's ideal,
great,
right? But you can't always avoid fees. We usually recommend having an overall fee structure somewhere between maybe 0.5% to really no more than 1% per year. But it really comes down to what services and benefits are you getting because of those fees. You could go off to a Vanguard or something like that and invest the money yourself for maybe around 0.5%. But when you go through a financial crisis or a correction in the market, if taxes go up, if you have questions about estate planning, how to properly pass money on to heirs and beneficiaries, all those questions, you're on your own. And if you need help, you maybe have a 1-800 number that you have to call and talk to some stranger in India or something like that. And for some people, they're okay with that. Most of our clients who we work with are not okay with that. So you want to have an overall fee structure that's, maybe 1.5 at the maximum, below 1% is more ideal. But then it also matters what services you're getting for that fee structure, whatever it is that you're paying.
And I hear you talking about your clients. When they do start this planning and putting something in that's a little bit safer, say 10 years out of retirement, and then they see the market go up and up and up and up and up, I'm sure you get phone calls going, I'm in structured safe stuff. Was it wise to do that? Why is it wise to do that?
Well, there's still some safe investments that are out there that will still allow you to have a pretty decent return. Now, it's not going to be like the S&P 500 or some other very risky position, but you should still be able to get, like Matt was saying a while ago, somewhere between maybe 6 and 10%. But you could do that with a lot safer investment than maybe a Vanguard fund or something like that.
And the other thing that you have to understand, when it comes to retirement planning, we're running a marathon. Yeah. It's not a sprint. So you could have some years where if you're taking a little bit of a safer approach, sure, maybe you didn't do as good as your neighbor did. But that's going to be offset in years when your neighbor is really struggling with how much money they're losing, and you're in a safe, protected position. So it's kind of the tortoise and the hare analogy.
You can sleep at night.
And we talk a lot about those types of things in the book because retirement planning, it's you have the factual information, you have the numbers and everything that we have to go over, but you also have the emotional side of it and the emotional decisions that have to be made, which I would argue in a lot of cases are probably the more important decisions than just the factual. And so in the book, we dive into that a little bit.
Thank you very much. And if you would like a copy of Matt's book, all you have to do is visit swdgroup.com. And stay tuned for more Strategic Wealth with Matt Dicken right after the break.
Is to run a full analysis. I mean, you really can't answer those types of questions unless you've analyzed that specific situation for that individual that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Look, nobody's born knowing how to plan for retirement. So why not start your retirement education the same way thousands of Kentuckiana couples have by attending one of our educational seminars created and hosted by the financial professionals at Strategic Wealth Designers. The retirement professionals at Strategic Wealth Designers will show you ways to make informed decisions. For many, this workshop was the first stop on the road to their successful retirement. Register for an event that works best for you at swdgroup.com/events.
WHAS 11 salutes Strategic Wealth Designers as a leading retirement and wealth management firm in Kentuckiana. The advisors at Strategic Wealth Designers have been helping retirees and pre-retirees live a safe and stress-free retirement since 2002.
Hi, and welcome back. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking today about our blueprint process and what that actually is. Matt, can you spend a little time elaborating on what is a blueprint, first of all?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at retirement planning, it can get kind of confusing. Even here on the show, we talk about quite a few different things, right? We talk about watch out for fees and expenses that are unnecessary. Keep your taxes to a minimum. We talk about when you should or should not take Social Security. How to have an appropriately diversified portfolio. We have a lot of different things we discuss, right?
Yeah.
So what we've created is our blueprint process, is a proprietary process that we take potential clients and clients through that kind of analyzes all of that and puts it into one nice big picture, one report, so it can show individuals basically all the way out into the age 100, if they want us to run it that long, of what the impact's going to be on themselves, and will show if the money will be there as long as they need it to be, and if they're keeping their fees intact, if they're minimizing taxes. We kind of analyze all of those different areas.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you're going to go build a house, the first thing you need to do is put together a plan. You're going to go talk to an architect, and he's going to put together a set of blueprints or plans based upon your goals, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms. He's going to understand what are you trying to accomplish before he puts a plan together. So basically, it's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's something that's really, really important. We'll get questions all the time from individuals. They'll say, well, I want to retire in 18 months. Do you think I can? Or they'll say, should I move this money here? Or should I invest in a Roth IRA? And we have our opinions, probably in a lot of scenarios, but what makes more sense more often than not is to run a full analysis. I mean, you really can't answer those types of questions unless you've analyzed that specific situation for that individual that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Of course, we have some general rules or analysis or advice that we may give to individuals, but without running a full-blown blueprint to analyze everything from every angle, then you're kind of guessing a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, because you just said, I mean, fees, risk, how are you going to leverage your assets for income, Social Security? I mean, if any one of these things are wrong, it could basically derail the whole plan.
Yeah, not only some of those, but also taxes.
Yeah.
Dustin, taxes have been in the news a lot here recently.
Yeah.
And we're in one of those unique environments right now where I think tax rates are probably about as low as we're going to see for the foreseeable future.
Probably our lifetime, I mean, if we're realistic.
If you take a look at some of the issues with changing demographics, problems with the debt that we have to address at some point, unfunded liabilities with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, we're going to have to generate more revenue for the federal government. And the way they're going to go about doing that is by increasing taxes, right?
Yeah.
So we can actually analyze individuals' situation and show them what the impact would be of higher income taxes in the future. And we can also show them some analysis on things they can do today to help protect themselves and prevent them from being kind of blindsided by potentially higher income taxes in the future. We can show them what the impact will be if they were to move money from taxable or tax-deferred environments over to tax-free.
Yeah.
And keeping fees low, getting the best performance you can get with the least amount of risk, those are all really important things. And when to take Social Security, that's all great questions. But I also think that this tax issue, if you have a retirement plan that you're trying to use or some advisor has run for you, or you went online and you did one of the free ones, if they're not analyzing the impact of higher income taxes, then I really think that whole report or analysis is really worthless. Because I think it's probably the number one threat that most advisors aren't talking about, but it's included in our blueprint process.
I mean, let's be real. You're going to pay taxes, or your family's going to be paying taxes at some point. So what we do is really look at the tax footprint for their whole life. Does it make sense to pay 20% versus 60% later, or we don't know what it could be later.
Yeah, and the idea that we could have tax rates that are 40 and 50 and 60% should not be a shocking idea for a lot of individuals. We've had tax rates that have been even higher than that in the past, and I'm not talking about just the highest income earners. There's been a lot of analysis and studies that have been done, some by the government themselves, where they've taken a look at some of the unfunded liabilities we have, and the government has come out and said, well, we need to, in some cases, more than double the tax rates. And so what that means is they're talking about taking maybe the 15% bracket we have right now and taking that to at least 30%, in some cases 35 or 40%. And that means taking a 25% bracket, and instead it's a 60 or 70% bracket. We've had that in the past. And I think if you look at the numbers, we're going to have something like that potentially again in the future. I don't have a crystal ball. What I'm talking about as part of our blueprint process is we analyze that scenario of saying, well, what if it does happen? Because there's a whole lot of people much smarter than us that are saying it's happening. And so what would somebody do? If they go into retirement and they think their tax rate's going to be 15%, but instead it ends up being just 25% or 30%, that's going to have a massive impact on their lifestyle and on how long their portfolio is going to last. So that is something that has to be included, which we do include in our blueprint along with everything else that we're talking about.
I mean, we're going to pay taxes. That's what the point of this is. Would you rather pay it at today's tax rate? Well, it's probably the lowest that we're going to see in our lifetime. Or would you rather wait until you're not sure what it's going to be? We'd be happy to run a blueprint for you and find out how much taxes you may be able to save through your lifetime, how much fees you may be able to reduce throughout your retirement, how much risk you currently have in your portfolio, and Are there ways to reduce that and maybe still increase the performance? Give us a call at our office and request a blueprint ran for you. What I mean by that is depending on what your goals are and what your age is probably going to determine what types of goals that you're going to have.
WHAS 11 salutes Strategic Wealth Designers as a leading retirement and wealth management firm in Kentuckiana. The advisors at Strategic Wealth Designers have been helping retirees and pre-retirees live a safe and stress-free retirement since 2002.
Welcome back. Let's spend a little time talking now about the investment life cycles. And what I mean by that is depending on what your goals are and what your age is probably going to determine what types of goals that you're going to have. And what I mean by that is I'm going to use three different examples here. And I'm actually going to use my son Jacob. He is 20 years old. He's just joined the Air Force and starting to start saving some money. He's starting to make a little bit of money now. He can put some away. Well, his goals at this point, well, let me be realistic. His goals are not really thinking about retirement planning. He's thinking about what's that new car that he can buy, or what's the new motorcycle that he can get when he's back from boot camp. So his goals at this point, they're going to probably require him to have some type of savings account or checking account. And then he's got a lot of time left until retirement. I mean, 20 years old, he's like I said, he's not really thinking about retirement, although I keep beating it into his head. He's got 40 years left of working until he does actually transition into retirement. So what he could do is right now he could go out and take basically his entire portfolio could be in stocks that are aggressive, maybe like Teslas or Facebook or things that are going to be pretty volatile over the years, but it's likely that a company like that will be here 30, 40 years from now. So he can go out and afford to take a whole bunch of risk in order to get those big returns. If he has a big loss, that's okay. He's 20. He's got so much time to make it back that he's in good shape. As a matter of fact, if the market went through some volatility or through some correction years, he could look at that as a good thing because now he's putting money away while the market's low, so he's buying shares at that cheaper cost so that when the market does start to rise, his portfolio is going to grow along with it. Now, once you get into your, say, 40s, now I just turned 40 this year. Now, I'm not necessarily thinking about the day I'm going to retire, but my goals are much, much different than Jacob's are at this point. My goals, I'm starting to think about, well, what would happen to my family if something happened to me? Are they going to be okay? Are my kids going to have enough money to go to the schools they want? Are they going to be able to do the sports and enjoy the activities that they want? So I'm definitely going to look at some type of life insurance strategies. Now, I do have some planning going on for retirement, but I'm not being as conservative as someone that's closer to retirement. So I'm definitely taking a lot of risk. I've got a little bit of a safety net in my portfolio. I've got a good balance. I follow something called the Rule of 100. So I've got about 40% of my portfolio in investments that aren't really going to fluctuate when the market does see a little bit of volatility. But the bulk of my portfolio, 60% of it, I'm taking quite a bit of risk. I've got 30 years probably until I retire. And if they can get me to retire at that point, I love what I do, so I may not even retire in my 70s. Now, if you think about my parents, they're both turning 66 this year. Their goals are going to be very different than mine at this point. Now, they've both worked their long careers. My mom worked at UPS for nearly 40 years. She got a great pension and some health insurance coverage when she retired from them for both mom and dad. Dad owned a business his entire life, and he was an entrepreneur. He did a very good job at saving for his retirement. Well, they've accumulated their nest egg. They've accumulated enough assets so that they could transition over into retirement. Well, they sure don't want to have the same goals as me. They definitely don't want to have the same goals as Jacob. So what they are doing at this point is they've got a portfolio that's about 65% of it is in a very safe environment. They're getting that guaranteed income, the guaranteed interest year after year. They don't have to worry about interest rate change. They don't have to worry about stock market volatility. But they've got some benefits that they can enjoy for now or 20 or 30 more years from now that they don't have to worry about running out of money. Now, with their securities portion, with the stocks, with the exchange-traded funds that they have in their portfolio, they're not geared towards growth at this point. They're more of a balanced portfolio. They don't want to see the big volatility. They don't need the big years anymore, as long as they never have any of the big down years. You know, if you're close to retirement, especially if you're within 10 years or so of that retirement date, you want to really look at your portfolio. Look at your 401k that you have. Look at the IRAs that you've opened throughout the years at the bank or maybe the credit union. And are these investments really the right tools to have in place if you're within 10 years of retirement? Most people, they don't really think about talking with a financial advisor until it's maybe 5 years away from retirement or 3 years away from retirement. The time to start planning is once you're about 10 years or so away from retirement. There's some strategies you'll start wanting to put in place long before you retire, because the market does move in cycles. Now, nobody has a crystal ball, but what goes up must come down. We do know that. And when the market is going through a correction, it's taken as long as 18 years to get back to even. So if you're within 10 years of retirement, you don't have time any longer to make up for that type of volatility. So give us a call at our office if you have any questions about the risk portion of your portfolio, or do you have enough conservative investments? Are you geared towards retirement, or are you geared still towards savings? We look forward to hearing from you.
Can be a viable option, but I think if you have more than $100,000, then you may want to consider some other options within that 401k.
Look, nobody's born knowing how to plan for retirement. So why not start your retirement education the same way thousands of Kentuckiana couples have? By attending one of our educational seminars created and hosted by financial professionals at Strategic Wealth Designers. The retirement professionals at SWD will show you ways to make informed decisions. For many, this workshop was the first stop on the road to their successful retirement. Register for an event that works best for you at swdgroup.com/events.
There's an option within a lot of 401ks that I know that has become very, very popular over the years that I want to share a little bit of information on. And what I'm talking about are life cycle funds. It's become a very easy way within 401ks to make your selection. Now, some life cycle funds or age-weighted funds, depending on where you might work or where your 401k is currently, will have sometimes a year assigned to it, meaning that's your target date as far as when you plan on retiring. And it's become a real easy way to make your selection and just kind of move forward. And if you don't have much money invested in the 401k, meaning if you have less than, say, $100,000 invested within it, a life cycle fund or an age-weighted fund, you know, whatever they're referring to it as, can be a viable option. But I think if you have more than $100,000, then you may want to consider some other options within that 401k. Basically, what these life cycle funds are is they're just a fund of funds. So they're a collection of mutual funds within the product selection that you could just choose from individually. What that means is that it's just going to kind of add an extra layer of fees. Each one of the mutual funds within your portfolio are going to have some costs, but then when you go into a life cycle fund, it's going to have a little extra cost added in on top of it. So you really have to watch out for how expensive these funds can become. It's not unusual for us to see life cycle funds or, again, age-weighted funds charging in excess of 2% per year, sometimes even more. Over a lifetime, that can add up to tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of unnecessary additional fees. Another thing that you need to watch out for, though, is misleading names or titles. If they don't have a date or a target date or a year in which you've selected, they might have a real generic sounding term like moderate fund or U.S. investment fund or something of that nature. One real misleading name I think that we've seen in the past is the conservative fund option. We literally have seen some conservative funds in the past in years like 2008 lose as much as 30 or 40%. Something that loses 30 or 40% in my mind isn't very conservative. But that was literally the name that the 401k had given to that particular fund option. So watch out for misleading titles. They're not always what they say that they are, and they're not always what you assume them to be. Another thing that you have to watch out for is with these types of funds, typically, especially if they're age-weighted or they have a target date as far as when you plan on retiring, what they'll do is as you get older and closer to that targeted retirement date, they will start to automatically shift money from stocks and the stock market over into bonds and the bond markets. And again, when they do that, they're just using bond mutual funds, which those that watch the show, that we're really not a big fan of those at any point in time. But right now really is not a good idea to have money invested in bond funds, especially for individuals that are getting closer into retirement. The reason for that is because as interest rates go up, the value of bonds and these bond funds are going to go down because the bond funds are very interest rate sensitive. Even though interest rates have come up a little bit recently, we're still fairly close to historical lows. And all signals that we're seeing right now is that interest rates are going to continue to rise in the future. So what you may think could be happening with these types of funds is as you're getting closer to retirement, they're shifting more money over into bond funds, and you may think that that's a safer way to go. And in most cases, I'll agree that bonds and bond funds are safer than stocks or stock funds, but they certainly are not safe. They have a time and a place. It's just right now is not the time to be investing in bond funds, as we mentioned with the issues with interest rates. So that means that if you're getting closer into retirement in a few years, they really have no place within your 401k or anywhere in your portfolio for that matter. So if you have more than, say, $100,000 invested in a 401k, or maybe it is already an outside IRA where you're using these life cycle funds or age-weighted funds, you may want to consider shifting all or part of that money towards a self-directed IRA if you can with your employer. You know, sometimes once you reach age 59 and a half, you're able to do what's referred to as an in-service distribution or in-service rollover, where you can actually take money out of the 401k. You can still participate in it, you can still contribute to it, but you can actually take some of that money and just move that to an IRA. Once the money is over in an IRA, you can invest it in anything that you would like, whether it's life cycle funds or just traditional funds or ETFs or annuities, whatever it is that you want. If your plan does not allow that, then I would really encourage you to still consider shifting some of the assets that you have within that 401k or 403b out of these life cycle funds and just pick from the list of funds that you have that has been made available to you. You should be able to reduce your fees and expenses some and get really better diversification than what you think you have currently with the age-weighted or life cycle fund. So if you would like to see if you can do an in-service distribution, or if you need advice or help with how to allocate your 401k, if you want to get away from these types of funds, then feel free to give us a call here at Strategic Wealth Designers. We'd be happy to help in any way that we can.